Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and today we got some news, and that news is that my A320 guide version 2 has been released for anyone who might have missed this. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and create a video that matches the guide's instructions. Okay, we're going to go through step by step. Everything that's in the guide will be displayed here in the video, as well as you guys will be able to see in action any changes that we need to address mid-flight. I know this is kind of a long one. We're going to be going from Tucson, Arizona over to Los Angeles, California. I will make sure to break everything down into the chapters. That way you guys can skip to sections that you guys might have had an issue with as you're walking through the guide. The guide is available on my Patreon site. You simply just need to subscribe as tier 2 or above to access it. The guide is going to be going through constant updates. Things that are currently in the works that I will be adding to it this week are going to be things like the RNAV approach and how to properly fly an RNAV approach, editing and deleting waypoints and discontinuities in the MCDU, and then a few other things as they come up. I'm going to try to keep it as up to date as possible, especially as more and more features become available to the A32NX. The A32NX can be found in a couple of different ways. So first link is here. This will take you to the GitHub if memory serves. Let's go ahead and click on that and just hit allow here. And it does indeed, or there is a second section here that takes you a little bit further on, and I did not mean to close it, and I totally just did I? No, I didn't. There we go. And that is to the flybywire sim website. So let's go ahead and walk through real quickly what installing this would look like. It's actually very easy if you follow these steps here. So we're just going to go ahead and bring up this website here. All right, it takes you to the flybywire sim website. We're going to go to downloads. Going to go to all downloads. Install instructions. I know it says stable, but we're actually going to grab the development version. I'm going to show you how in a minute. You come here and you download the installer. Okay, the installer is going to come down here, find your downloads folder, and you'll see this guy here. Just go ahead and extract here. You can use 7-zip or just hit extract all and it'll put it in the same directory. But in this case, we're just going to hit extract here. Take this guy and copy it somewhere where you want it to stay. Okay, every now and then the downloader itself will be updated, but when you launch it, it will tell you, and you just come back through these steps and download it again. But in our case, so I have it in my applications for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and it's right here. Okay, to install it, and actually let me close the flight simulator real quick. That's kind of important. To install it, we're just going to give it a double click. Real easy to handle. And perfect example. A320NX downloader and installer. Please close MSF before installing. Okay, so we're going ahead and bring that down. It looks like it hadn't quite shut down yet, so let me go ahead and run it again. There it goes. So the first thing you need to do is click your destination folder, and what it's looking for is your packages folder. So we're going to go packages and community, and this is the folder that it's looking for. Okay. And now this is a custom directory for me, so you just have to know where you installed your community folder, and if you selected a custom installation during the install. The other thing I'm going to be doing for you guys this week, I still get a lot of questions about installing mods, installing liveries, changing the package's location, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to actually completely uninstall my Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and then create a new installation video from start to finish. You guys will get to see what I do literally from the start of the process to the end. Now, because I'm doing it like that, just a heads up on that, this is going to be from the Microsoft Store. I don't have it on Steam, and I don't have it on I think the Game Pass is the other option. I actually got it from the Microsoft Store. So, but I'm sure a lot of the procedures will be very similar. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this out. We picked our folder. Okay, and now you can select which version you want. I always choose the development version. It gives you the latest and greatest. Literally every single day I can open this up and there's an update to it. I have yet to run into any issues with the development version where I could not fly the aircraft that wasn't already impacting the stable version. I mean, and typically those issues involve a problem with Microsoft Flight Simulator itself, not so much the aircraft. But so we're going to go ahead and hit development version. You can see it's going to update. Go ahead and let that complete. So first it's downloading, now it's installing. tells you where it's going to, and tells you that everything's good to go. We just exit it, and now we can launch the simulator. So with that being said, the A320X is installed and ready to go. All right, so our next step in the process here is to create our flight plan. I actually tend to do this still before actually going into the simulator. It just makes it a little bit easier for me. So we're going to do American Airlines. Our document has 4312 selected. We're going from Tucson International over to KLAX. Our alternate is Ontario. And our airframe, now I know I have there is an airframe specifically for, and this will be another thing that I add to the doc at a later time. There's quite a bit more I want to add, there really is. But there's actually a specific profile for the A320NX. But I'm going to assume that most people don't have that yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the A320-200, which is by default in SimBrief. So, and it's certainly more than close enough for what we need. All right, cruise profile, we're going to leave all this at default. Fuel factor, I am going to reduce because I do know for a fact it tends to give me quite a bit more gas than what I need. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce this by 30%, and I do that by selecting M for minus and 30 as the percentage. Okay, we can leave all this as its default. The other thing we want to make sure is you are in a LIDO format for the OFP, as that will match the guide. Okay, I'm also going to change it from pounds over to kilograms. Okay. Now let's get into our actual flight. We're going to be departing from 29 right, and we're going to be arriving at 25 left. So that actually works out. That's what the guide has as well. A lot of this information going forward from here, you can actually change as you choose. It's really not critical, but we're going to go ahead and take another 1,000 kilograms of fuel. And the one change I am going to make is for much of the flight, we're actually restricted to 320 as our flight level. So I'm going to go ahead and make it, and honestly, I wish I had caught this before the guide, and this may be one of the edits that I do moving forward. We'll see. It would require quite a few changes, and it's really not a critical piece. But telling you here on the video, I would set it more like to 24,000 feet. Like we don't have to go that high. And you can see that the planned step climbs unchecked. Don't worry about it. That's totally okay. All right, and then we just make sure that all of this matches, and this is still current. So the Wildcat 3 to the Gila Bend, over onto the J104, to Messy, from Messy direct to Eastwind onto the Hollywood 1 star. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and come up top and hit Generate OFP, or Operational Flight Plan. Now from here you have a couple of different options. First off, it gives you a lot of the same information in the breakdown. The OFP summaries here gives you your routing, any dispatcher remarks, that's obviously just simulated. Our block time of 1 hour 44 minutes. Our flight time is going to be at 1 hour and 16 minutes. Now I am going to be using a little tool that will sort of shorten that down a bit, just to make things a little bit easier for us. And I'll show you guys what that tool is. Cruise level at flight level 240, so that's perfectly fine. We can see our routing here, okay? And then you also have your OFP here, okay? Now, if you have any trouble reading this, as I point out in the guide, you can click on this link here. And what you would want is essentially to put them side by side. But the nice thing about this doc is if you see, every time you mouse over something, it tells you what it is. So this is really handy, especially as you're learning. And getting more and more familiar with the OFP. For simulation purposes, there isn't a ton that we really have to watch. There's quite a few pieces in the top section. Obviously, the fuel is going to be a big one. Let's come down here a bit. Our routing is going to be a big one. And then finally, the weights is going to be another one. Basically, the only thing we're going to take out of weight is the payload, the total payload amount. Okay, and then you may want to be looking at your detailed flight route, which is here. Okay, and you have your airway, the SID or the star up on top, and the actual waypoint down bottom, or on the bottom there. Gosh, I can't talk tonight. TOC, just for everyone, so everyone understands, if I ever use that verbiage, is top of climb. It's when you reach your cruise altitude, and top of descent is the point at which you literally start to descend. So you're at the top of your descent. Okay? All right, so that is our flight plan create. I'm going to go ahead and close this one and go back to our OFP here. And what I like to do is print the PDF. I find it easier to manage. I can close SimBrief now, and I can resize this as I choose. All right, and we can see on the guide here, We just walked through the exact same steps. The nice thing about the guide here is it breaks down what everything is step by step that we just went through, right? From changing the format over to changing the aircraft type, etc. Tells you that you can scroll the flight plan through here. I mean, just literally everything we just did walks you down through it. Now, there's two ways of entering the flight plan. One is to go through 2.1 here, which is entering the flight plan in the flight simulator prior to actually getting into the cockpit of the aircraft. This step is optional. I mean, you can really pick whichever one you prefer. I like to do it in the aircraft. It's more direct. It's you have more control without fussing with the GUI and the interface of the simulator. You just, if something's wrong, you clear it out. It's kind of thing. I am also going to see if I can create a discontinuity today so you guys can have some of that. Okay, so we're going to be skipping over the 2.0 section, I think, here. All right, so then we get into 3.1. Yep. So we go through the cockpit tour. I'm not going to be going through that today. You guys, the guide is available for anyone who's interested in this, but it literally does take a spin around the entire cockpit, giving you guys at least an idea of what most of the information is. I'm sure there's things I've missed or maybe mistyped, but you guys will definitely be able to understand very much so what the aircraft is telling you on a particular screen. So still plenty of reference points in the guide. So from this point now, let's go ahead and launch the simulator and we'll set up our aircraft. All right, so we're in the simulator here. We're selected our aircraft. Now, one of the things that I just realized that I did not do while I was in the sim brief is I actually skipped a couple steps, got a little ahead of myself, so I want to show you guys what that is. I skipped the cost index, okay? It's CI on the sim brief, and again, the guide does show it. And actually, if you want, we can just go up there to it real quick. So this is all of our configuring the weights of the aircraft. Let me bounce up here a little bit. Let's go back up to the sim brief section. Just so you guys can see it is there. Cost index right here is 60, and it just says it as CI. So if we go back. So actually we only had 0.5 of extra fuel here at 127 passengers, 10.5 on the cargo. I forgot to populate those as well. The altitude I had set to auto. This time I manually set it, but here's the cost index. Okay, so I set it at 60, and you can see that matched over here on our flight plan. This is the actual flight plan right here that I used to create this dock. Okay, so if you just follow the guide step by step, you actually don't even need to create this flight plan in SimBrief if you don't want to, because all of the information that is on this flight plan right here is in the dock. Okay, so you guys can just use it if you just want to load up the dock and just walk through step by step for a second, just to sort of see how things are done. That's totally up to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move that off. I just wanted you guys to see some of the changes that you may see versus what's on the screen here. So you have two different times at which we can set our weights and balances. I like to just set it before we even launch the sim, get it out of the way. Now, just following our guide here. Oh, I'm not clicked in there, that's why. Give me a second, I'm just getting to the right page here. So, here is all of our final numbers that I'm going to be entering into the simulator here. But just so you guys can see for yourself, if we go up above, I break down actually using a Windows 10 calculator how I got all of the numbers that I'm entering. I literally break everything down, show you in the flight plan where I got it, why I'm entering them in here, etc., and even how to set the calculator up for kilograms over to pounds, right? Because that's what we're going to be entering today. So I'm going to come back over here. I just wanted you guys to know that how I got these numbers exists in the guide. So I'm going to go ahead and take this down to 20%. And you don't have to be dead on the money. We just want to be close. So I'm going to go 3322. 3332. And I've entered this so many times at this point. And we're going to be at 55.4. So I'm going to go up to 55. And remember to set it to pounds. That's kind of important here. All right, and I'm going to go 10-100 here. And we're doing 5,300 here. And this guy is 10-100 again. These are pretty unrealistic numbers, but you guys can play around with your weights and balances later if you want to get that critical with it. And 15,320. And 29.6 on our Mac is what we're using in the guide, so it works out perfect. So if we just come here, and what I mean by that, if you see here, so you guys can see we're keeping the configuration the same, 29.59 versus 29.6. It's going to be the exact same in the MCDU. Okay, so we've got our weights and balances configured. Let's go ahead and set our weather and time. It is not midnight here. I don't know why it's doing that. Oh, because I haven't selected the departure. That would probably be helpful. Let's go back to our world map. And what happened here? Where are we? Well, that's the US. All right. What happened here? Where did all my... Interesting. There it goes. That was odd. Huh. Anyway. All right, so we're at gate 160 in the guide. Got our weight set. That's why the time was all screwed up, because I wasn't clicked on anything. And let's put it early in the morning. Nice pretty takeoff, right? Tucson has really pretty sunrises and sunsets, so, you know, add a little flair to the sim, right? Sorry, I'm trying. It's been a long week. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit fly. All right, so here we are at Tucson International. This is gate 160, just after 7 a.m. You can see it's a beautiful morning. And let's go ahead and get our aircraft up and rolling. So let's go ahead and jump back into the seat here. We're going to obviously start by coming up top, and actually disregard that. We're going to start by coming in the back. So I'm going to walk through the guide step by step and make sure that everything is as it should be. Engine master switches, we're going to make sure in the off position, the engine master mode switch, we need to make sure it's in the norm. Coming up front just a little bit, let me back up here. We want to make sure our landing gear handle is down and locked here. Coming up top, make sure windshield wipers are in the off position, and battery switches, we're going to go ahead and turn them on. So there's one, there's two, and external power if available. Go ahead and give it a rock and roll there. Picking our head up just a little bit, we need to test the APU fire system. So first thing we're going to do is give it a left click. First click will, let me turn that speaker down, there we go. First click will bring the APU guard up. Go ahead and give it a tap and hold. Listen for our chime. Make sure everything is functional there. All right. Go ahead and go to the next page here. Now we can go ahead and set our lighting as we desire. So I'm going to go ahead and set my overhead lights just a little bit. First notch there should do good. We're going to turn on our, actually, sorry, yep. Let's go ahead and do our dome light to dim for now. It's a little dark in here. We're going to walk around, set our PFD, primary flight display, our nav display, ECAM top, the lower display, and same over on the co-pilot side. Nav display, primary flight display. Set the FCP brightness as choose, and backlighting. And then you can do the same thing on the pedestal if you choose, as well as floodlights are an option as well. But I don't think we'll really need the floodlights, but we'll leave them on for now. Doesn't take long to get bright here in Tucson, so. All right, coming back to the rear pedestal, we want to make sure that the parking brake is set. Cockpit door is currently set to norm. Flaps are up and spoilers are disarmed. Let's go ahead and come back to the overhead panel. We want to make sure our probe heat is set to auto. Let's move on down. All right, we've already set our weights and balances. This is also something you can do from the cockpit of the aircraft simply by coming up here and clicking on this weight bar here. Okay, it brings us to the same menu. But we've already completed that step, so let's go ahead and move back. All right, continuing with the cockpit preparation, we would press our CVR test. It's currently not functional. Next, we want to come up top and make sure that the evacuation order is set to captain. Then moving on up to the top to our ADIRS, this is our navigation system. Make sure we turn on the IRS alignment for there's 1, 2, and then 3 in the center. And make sure that those are setting to alignment. Now, something real quick that you guys might want to adjust before we move forward. Now, this is also covered in the guide in a couple steps further, but I want to go ahead and give you guys a heads up on it now. If we move down to the MCDU, we can come here to the options page. We can go to the ADIRS align time, and you have instant, fast, and real. I set mine to instant. I hate waiting for the alignment, and plus I can get this thing rolling pretty quick. Hit the clear button to clear that display message. Again, this is in the guide, tells you to do that. Go to return, and then we can go ahead and in a later video I'll go over all these cool options that are really starting to come into the aircraft. Fly-by-wire Sim's really doing an amazing job at this thing. But let's go ahead and just stay at the main menu for now, and again, clear to clear that screen. Let's go back up top and complete the checklist here. So we've set our IRS notary or rotaries to 3. We can turn our wing lights on, and we can turn the nav and logo lights on. Seatbelt signs, set them to on, and the no smoking sign set to on. Emergency lights, arm before we get our passengers boarding. Set the air conditioning in the aircraft as we choose. And make sure packs are set to norm. Alright, next coming back up over here, landing elevation. We want to make sure it's set to auto, which is the top center position. Batteries 1 and 2 are on. We're going to cycle them real quick, make sure that we get the alert. So there's off and then back on again. And then now we can do our engine fire test as well. So we're just going to press and hold. Engine 2. Now, because we fueled our aircraft, we can go ahead and set our fuel pumps on. But if you are fueling while on the ground, wait until the refuel is complete before you turn your fuel pumps on, okay? And you'll know when the refuel is complete because the weights and balances screen will pop up automatically on its own. So there's our fuel pumps turned on. Crew oxygen supply, turn it on. And I believe we are ready to move downstairs. All right, let's go ahead and get down to the MCDU. Helps when I click on the right screen. There we go. All right, so we're going to select FMGC, Flight Management Guidance Computer. All right. Now, the first page here tells us the type of engines that we have on board. Nav Database 1, you can see good through December 3rd to December 30th of 20. That is our AIRAC cycle. Okay, the idle and performance degrade system. What this does is you can set a degraded number. So, for example, if we typed in 2.5, the aircraft would operate at 2.5% less maximum efficiency. Basically, what they do is for older aircraft that are starting to get some wear and tear on it, is they derate the performance of the engines to obviously save on maintenance and lifetime of the aircraft. Okay, and obviously you have type of aircraft up here at the top. Now let's go ahead and start with the initialization 1. Okay. And starting here, we're just going to type in KTUS to KLAX. Drop that in there. Get to the company page. We don't have any company route stored, so we're going to hit return. Next, type in our alternate, K Ontario. And again, all of this is in the guide. Tells you where to get it all, but let's go ahead and pull up our flight plan here. I'll bring that over for a second. All right, so real quick, because that way I don't have to keep typing back and forth, I'm going to show you guys. KTUS to KLAX right here. The only difference is instead of the hyphen, use the slash. Our alternate is right here. There's our alternate, K Ontario. That's where I'm getting that. Flight number, you can really type whatever you want in here, but we're going to type in AAL 4312. Our cost index is going to be right here, a cost index of 60. Higher the number, more fuel you burn, faster you fly. Okay, obviously the inverse, the other direction. And then our cruise altitude is right here. Now this shows 340, but remember today I'm actually going to take 240. Okay, actually, never mind. No, I won't. I'll stick it to the guide. We're going to do 340. Disregard that. All right, so just remember, I didn't really need to go that high is the biggest thing to remember that. So we're going to do American Airlines, and we're going to do 4312. Well, that's not the date. Did I cut the wrong one? I think I did. All right, now let's get our cost index. Cruise altitude. All right, now we're ready to go to the flight plan. And again, all this information is in here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come down to our routing page, or routing, however you want to say it. So we're going to start at Tucson International, go to 29 right, using the Wildcat 3 SID, Standard Instrument Departure. Fly to the Gila Bend transition, in which case we'll transition from our barometric pressure over to standard. Jump onto the J104, this is an airway. Fly to the Messy waypoint. So basically exit the J104 at Messy. Think of it as a freeway. Then we're going to fly direct to Eastwind, jump onto the Hollywood 1 Star or standard terminal arrival route, and then fly over to KLAX and land at 25 left. Okay? So that's how we're reading that. So let's go ahead and enter it in. So we're going to select Tucson International. Obviously, that's where we're starting. We want the departure. We're getting out of here, right? So hit departures. Remember I said we're flying out of 29er right. So there's 29er right. There's our Wildcat 3 that we saw. And there's our GBN, or the Gila Bend is what this is. Okay? And then we just hit insert. And we see the same thing here. So Gila Bend, Wildcat 3, 29er right. If we bring our flight plan over, Gila Bend, Wildcat 3, 29er right. Okay? So just hit insert. Now here's where I'm going to try to create a discontinuity. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and just enter in our star. So we're going to do arrival. Now the way to look at the arrival is the exact opposite. So we're going to come the other direction. 25 left, Hollywood 1 to Eastwind. Now I'm not going to enter the Eastwind. Normally I would have entered the Eastwind right now. And actually, hold on a second. I got ahead of myself. Let's back up just a hair. First, let's enter the airway. So now, remember I said we're going from Gila Bend to the J104. So I clicked on Gila Bend. Let me back up again. So I'm finding the Gila Bend. Then I'm going to airways. So from the Gila Bend, we're going to jump on to the J104. Sorry, I know I'm bouncing around a little bit, guys. I'm trying not to. Forgive me. Mind gets going so crazy. All right, so airways always on the left. Waypoint's always on the right. All right, and so we're just going to leave that and hit insert, and we can scroll up, and you can see it. J104, these are all the waypoints we're going to hit en route to Messy, okay? So now, let's go ahead and do as I was going to do, and I'm going to try to create, normally what I would do is enter a direct waypoint over to Eastwind. I'm going to try to create a discontinuity. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I had someone ask me how to delete a discontinuity, so I'm going to see if I can fix that. All right, so we're going to start from the arrival. Remember I said we're going to read it in the reverse order, so we're going to scroll up. We're landing at 25 left. We're coming in on the Hollywood 1 and the Sivu transition. Now, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So to determine the Sivu transition, what we need actually is our, and by the way, all of this is broken down step by step in the guide. Literally tells you everything. Breaks down the waypoints, how to understand them. But here is the Hollywood 1, as you can see here, arrival plate. Okay, you can see we jump on the Hollywood. We're going to go to Bruin, Aviator, Day, Watt Up, etc. And right there, that icon indicates a transition point for us based on the end of the flight route. Okay. Now, if I'm saying any of this a little weird, my apologies. I'm still learning as I go, but I'm getting a better understanding of at least how to read this. We do know that Sivu is our via, or transition point, onto the ILS for 25 left. So we're going to use Sivu, and it looks like it auto-populated that. So we'll see what happens. So let's read this in reverse. We're going to be going from Eastwind. Let's bring our flight plan back up. And actually, I happen to have it right here. So here's our flight plan. So let's read this in the reverse. We're going to be coming in from Eastwind, off the Hollywood 1 Star, via Sivu, which we saw on the approach plate right here, to the ILS 25 left approach, right here. Okay? Hope that makes sense. And so now, again, just hit insert. And let's see if I was able to create one. I don't think I was. Nope, it put it in. So I was trying to leave Eastwind out. Okay, but that's something that you guys can see. That's actually, I have you in the guide actually enter in the direct waypoint. And how we would do that is we can do it one of two different ways. So normally we would simply just type Eastwind and drop it in at our final waypoint, because we would enter in everything else before the arrival. Okay, and the guide shows you step by step how I did that. I was hoping that I would be able to create a discontinuity so I could show you guys how to fix that, but unfortunately today it didn't let me. So, but remember our approach plate, Bruin, Aviator, Day, Watt Up, Neil. Bruin, Aviator, Day, Watt Up, Neil. Okay, and then ending with Sivu to get us onto the ILS. All right, so that's our waypoints locked in. So now let's go ahead and verify that there aren't any issues. And how we're going to do that is we're going to scroll up to the top. Okay, so right here, we're going to set our rotary to plan. All right, so now that we're set to plan, we can set to 10 or 20. Hitting the up arrow here, we can step through our flight. And what we're looking for here is we're looking for any breaks in the green line. That would be a discontinuity. Literally, like for example, if the line between Kaffa and Colts was missing, that would be a discontinuity. Or the other thing that we're looking for is any big backtracks. Like let's say we were flying to Messi, then all of a sudden went all the way back over here and then came back. Right? That would be something that we would want to remove. All right, sorry about the little hiccup. I've got a 3-year-old having a little bit of a rough night. All right, so anyway, as I said, so we're looking for breaks in the flight plan, any weird deviations, major backtracks, okay? And then here we can see, here's the Sivu waypoint coming on to the actual ILS approach for 25 left, all the way down into Los Angeles, 25 left. All right, so that is the flight plan complete. All right, so next, let's go ahead and get back into the MCDU, and we need to start setting up the rest of the information, which brings us back to the initialization page. And again, I can't stress enough, everything here is in the guide step by step. So what we're going to do here is we're going to give the zero fuel weight center of gravity a tap. You can see it's auto-calculated as long as you have set your weights and balances already. Do not do this part before you set the weights, okay? Let's go ahead and give it a tap again, enter it in. Block fuel, a couple different places we can find it. We can obviously go to our flight plan as shown in the guide. You can also pick your head up and find it right here. 4.2 is what we're going to be looking at. All right, now we're going to give this a little bit to calculate. There it goes. Now I'm going to adjust a couple of these numbers according to what we have in the guide. Alternate fuel is going to be to 0.6. Then 0.7 on our final reserves. So this is the fuel required to get to our alternate. And this is that's the alternate, I believe, from KLAX. And then here is our final reserves. Basically how much time we got left at the very end. All right, we have our takeoff weight and landing weight. All right, and again, this is in kilograms, so 63,700 kilograms. All right, so there's the initial B page done. Now we're going to want to pay attention to this takeoff weight, this 63.7. Let's go ahead and move on to performance, and this is where we're going to need some of this. Now we're going to go to flaps 1. Transition altitude always in the US is 18,000 feet. Our flex temp is 64. I'm going to show you how we got that first. So I'm going to bring up my browser here. Aircraft. And in the guide, there is a link to this page. It is the flyby or A320 performance guide. So we're going to type A320 here. We're going to use the CFM engines as they're closest to what we have. And actually, let me double check that. I don't think that's true anymore. Stand by. MCDU menu, FMGC, should take us to the main page. Yep, it is. Disregard that. So stand there. Come back up. All right. And then we're going to keep it on metric for the moment. We're going to select our departure airport, which is KTUS. Now, we're going to flip it over to Imperial for just a second. Hit METAR. Anyway, and you can see what the altimeter currently is in Tucson. Now, the guide is going to show one thing. I recommend you guys take what the actual data currently is. So we're going to go ahead and use 3003 as our altimeter. So remember that. Okay, switching it back over to metric because we need metric for the rest of it. So just remember 3003. Flaps 1, we're going to use PAX. Will be on. We have passengers on board. Anti-ice will be off. Runway is currently dry. And funny enough, actually, it's raining outside, but, you know, what the heck. And then now we're going to come over and select our departure airfield, or runway, which is 29 right. And then here is where we enter that takeoff weight, which is 63.7. And I believe our, if we go back to the initialization page, 29.6 is our center of gravity. So we can just come right here, 29.6. Click in the box. That's what our trim stabilizer trim should be. And then now we're just going to come here and hit calculate. And our flex temp is 64. Again, step by step in the guide. So we're going to go back to performance page here. We're going to type 64 into our flex temp, and now we can start calculating our V speeds. So there's V1 at 130. Don't worry about this. This is just because VR and V2 have not been put in there yet. VR 131, V2 135. We're going to do 135 plus 10 up in the FCP. The reason why we do that is it just gives us a bit better takeoff performance is why they do that. Some of the larger aircraft would do plus 15, and I think even plus 20 in something like an A380, but I could be mistaken. So we're going to go 135 plus 10 is 145, and this is just in case we need to do managed speed. Now, we're not going to be following ATC today, but if you're using ATC, obviously you're going to use whatever clearance information they give you. So if you were using ATC, now would be a good time to request your clearance after you've entered your flight plan into the MCDU, okay? But since we're not using ATC, we're just going to set it up to 18,000 feet, which is our transition altitude, and then we'll move it up there to our climb. While we're here, we can go ahead and let me follow our checklist. We've done that, set our performance, got our calculator, set our V speeds, and yep, now we're going to go ahead and set our altimeter, 3003, and again, this is following the guide. Our constraints, our flight directors, constraint and flight directors. We're going to come down, hit our standby ADI, and set the altimeter pressure there. Again, 3003. Coming all the way to the back, we're going to pretend like we actually did use ATC and put in our transponder code. They gave us 2563, and we're going to set it to auto or on. All right. Now we're going to get ready to start the engine. So we're going to come up top, and we're going to start the APU and go ahead and start the beacon light. Let everyone know that the engines are going to get ready to be rolling. Okay, the APU will take a few minutes to come up. Honestly, you can probably turn this on just about any time you prefer. This is just going by the steps that I have in the guide. Okay. Once the APU is started, we will be presented with this screen here automatically. The flap open indicates that air is being taken in by the APU. Here we have the APU RPM and the exhaust temperature. Once it's ready, you'll see a big avail up here letting us know that the APU is ready for use. Since the cockpit is basically ready for takeoff, while we're waiting for the APU, we can go ahead and move forward a little bit and set the cockpit doors to locked. And we can get rid of our jetway. Now I am using Pushback Helper as a tool to manage the pushback, the jetway, and our fuel truck if we were using it. I also do have that in the guide and where to download it from. It is a very helpful tool, very lightweight, very easy to use, and absolutely beats trying to use the in-game ATC for that. We're done with our performance page here, so we can go ahead and go back to our flight plan here and also make sure that we're set to arc. I leave it at about 20 nautical miles for departure. APU is on almost to about 95% or so is when we'll get the availability for the APU. And the guide also does walk you through how to look at the aircraft when setting up your pushback. It also breaks down how to read the engine gauges, which is next. All right, and once the APU is ready, you can see that the bottom display, the lower display, automatically went back to the doors page. That's another big indicator that you're ready to come back up top. We want the APU bleed. You can hear that whistle. That whistle is a sound that it's getting ready to, it's taking over the power. Once it stabilizes, disengage external power. And we can now call for our pushback. So before calling for a pushback, what I like to do is actually set the brakes to off because they don't actually tell you to disengage the parking brake. So we'll disengage the parking brake, and I'm going to tell them to taxi us out to the right and activate. And just so you guys see, literally what I did is hit the activate button here, and that gets him rolling. Now, while that's happening, let's go ahead and start turning on the engines. We're going to change the master mode switch over to ignition. You can see we get the engine displays page up here. And start engine 2, which is our right engine. Go ahead and have him kick us over to the right here. Oh, one step I missed. As soon as you start the engine, you want to start your chronometer. And that's just to time the engine time. Make sure it doesn't take an exorbitant amount of time to start. I believe it's supposed to be about 1.5 minutes. But I don't know if that's actually accurate in the simulator right now. And the right engine generator is now available. That's close enough. Our taxiway is way back there, but I'm not going to worry about going that far back. Alright, we're going to reset our parking brake, and we can also now cycle engine 1. As we cycle engine 1, this is what we should have done with engine 2. Select the chronometer once to stop it, select it again to clear it, select it again to restart the clock. Now, let's go ahead and move over to the display here and talk about what displays. Up at top, we have our fan speed for low pressure, basically engine RPM. Exhaust temperature, N2, which is the compressor or high pressure speed, and then our fuel flow in kilograms per hour. Alright, with both engines now on and stabilized, we're just about ready for taxi. A few more steps to complete. So we're going to come up top to the overhead panel, disengage the APU bleed now that the generators 1 and 2 are flagged out. So we know that they've taken over, and we can disengage the APU. Come down below once again and set our ignition or engine master switch back into normal operation. We can set our flaps down to flaps 1 for takeoff. We want to arm the spoilers. You can see it by that white marker there, letting us know that they're up and armed. Turn our TCAS on to transmit and receive. This is traffic cautionary avoidance system. This lets us know about other airplanes that might be near us. Predictive wind shear, set it to auto, and if you choose weather radar, set it to on. I actually prefer it off, so I'm not going to set that today, but you can if you'd like. Go ahead and move back up top here. We're going to go ahead and select the flight control surfaces, and then move our flight controls around and verify that they move as expected with the control surfaces. Alright, so control surfaces are free and clear. Doors are locked and secured. Set our auto brakes to max in the event of a rejected takeoff. Call the cabin. And also set our nose wheel light up to taxi. Disengage our parking brake. And we're ready to get on out of here over to 2908. And we want to watch our ground speed right down here. Stay between about 15 and 20 knots for straight taxi. Try not to turn anywhere above about 10 knots. Anything above that and you can find yourself a little bit of an issue. Now we're going to go ahead and taxi out to the right, jump onto the taxiway, and then head down to the left there over to 29 right. Alright, basically center line the taxi line right up with about this bolt here, as you guys can see, is pretty close to center line there. Okay? Give you sort of a point of reference to at least aim for, especially if you're not sitting directly in front of the screen. Alright guys, so what we're going to do from here is we're going to taxi all the way down to the end of the runway here, or end of the taxiway, and then join 29 right. I'll come back to you right before we hit the runway. Alright, so we're approaching 29 right here. We'll stop at the hold short line here before we actually take the runway. I could have pulled up quite a bit more here, just stopping real quick. Alright, so now at this point we're going to change our nose wheel light up to takeoff. We're going to set our landing lights. Runway turn-off lights if you choose or if required, and our strobe light set to auto or on. And then finally, we also want to tap our takeoff config button here. And you can see that the ECAM warnings are clear. Any blue writing would be an indicator of action that still needs to be taken. Oh, helps if I don't have my foot on the brake. I'm like, why isn't it moving? I literally was sitting on my feet on the brake. Okay, so now we have center lined with the one way. First thing we're going to do is reset our chronometer. We're going to need that in a second. We're going to then power up the aircraft to 50%. You can see that little circle indicates the physical throttle position. So 50%-ish, verify that we're stabilized. Go ahead and start the chronometer. Move our throttle into the flex temp position, as that's what we entered in the MCDU. Now we're going to apply forward nose down. As you can see by a little cross on the left screen, see it moving? That's the stick position. Until we pass through about 80 knots, we're going to keep that nose wheel down. Passing through 80 knots, there we go. There's V1, little blue 1 on the left side. Triangles V2. V2 plus 10. Nose up. Gear up. Positive rate. Start flying our flight directors. I'm going to be pulling up about 3 degrees per second. I sort of lagged a little bit there. That hyphenated S on the left screen is indicating flap speed. So we're going to bring our flaps up. At this point, or really anytime after about 100 feet, we can engage the autopilot. You can see autopilot 1's now on. Watch right here as we get to our thrust reduction altitude. So now lever climb. So we're going to take our throttles, move them back into the climb position. From here, what the aircraft is going to do in just a few seconds here is going to descend a little bit, pitch nose down. It's already continuing to accelerate, so it actually already did pitch nose down. I just realized we're only at 9 degrees. So it pitched nose down, it's accelerating. Once it gets to our climb speed, the aircraft will pull back up and begin climbing out even further. And there it goes. And you can see our rate of ascent right here increasing. We were at about 2,500, now it's moving up past 4,000 feet per minute. Approaching the Wildcat 3. From here, we can disarm the spoilers. again, all of this is in the guide, step by step. I think the only thing that I just realized that I've missed in the guide so far is not telling you guys to set the nose wheel light to take off. That's it. You always want to remember that below 10,000 feet you are restricted to 250 knots. That's why you can see the purple magenta triangle here. Magenta typically means a restriction. 18,000 feet in blue, it means that is user configured. If it was in red, or the magenta, excuse me, it would again mean that there's an actual restriction. Since we passed 10,000 feet, what we can do is come up top now and shut our lights off. So we're going to turn the landing lights off. Turn off lights. Nose light. Oops. There we go. Didn't realize for it. Thought I clicked that. Oh well. Alright, and everything else for now we leave on. I can actually go ahead and turn the panel lights off now. Like I said, it's getting bright out. Doesn't take long out here. So at this point, we're just letting the aircraft climb until we reach our next stage. Alright, so we are approaching our target altitude. There's two things we can do here. We can just start rolling it up. In this case, we want to go up to 34,000 is our idea. Now it looks like it's already locked into the altitude that we initially set. So if it does that, all you simply do is see the up arrow here and put it back into climb mode. Now, much like open or climb, you have two different types of climb. So I'll get to that in just a second here. You can see that we passed through 18,000 feet, which means we want to go to a down arrow here and pull the altimeter to get us into standard. Alright, now to talk about that climb I was about to mention, we have climb, which is managed, which basically means the aircraft's going to use its climb profile to get up to the required altitude. Or we can do an open climb by hitting down here. You can see open climb, which what it's going to do is adjust any pitch angle to maintain the current climb speed, or the configured speed, to hit the climbing or the desired altitude. But in this case, we're just going to leave it managed, and the orange dot always indicates computer's managing it, right? It's following its profile. Whether that be speed, heading, altitude, doesn't matter. Orange dot, computer's in control. Take the dot away, it's whatever we set here. Notice before we had 18,000 feet in blue, okay? Now we see flight level 320 in magenta and a magenta altitude here. But we programmed 34,000 feet. What this means is that we are restricted to 32,000 feet or below up to a certain waypoint, which I'm willing to bet is going to be... I wonder if it's the Hollywood one. And that's why I was saying, like, we went higher than what we needed to, but that's okay. Eventually we'll get up that high. Alright, so at this point we're sort of at a chill mode for a minute, guys. I'm going to let it continue to climb on up to altitude. And then I'll see you guys when we get closer to the top of descent. Okay, guys, so I just want to show you guys that real quick, that once we pass the altitude restriction, you can see we've started to climb again. And now our altitude target is back in blue. Same thing with the altitude mode. Okay, so I wanted you guys to witness that change, although you would see it in your aircraft as well. But that was just something that I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys, as it's a pretty critical piece on how it all functions. That way you don't wonder what's going on when you're trying to make an aircraft climb and it's not, or descend for that matter. The descent will behave the same way. If you're not allowed to descend below a certain altitude, it won't let you. The flashing light, as you can see, the flashing yellow indicates that we're approaching your target altitude. You can see our altitude with the asterisk indicates that we've reached the target, and our speed mode has changed from the climb into the Mach mode. Our speed here is shown in Mach as it is up here as well. Okay. Now let's go ahead and real quick I'll show you guys the application that I use to speed up time. The application I use is this guy here. It's called Simrate Bandit. All I do is just run it, and again, just keep this anywhere you'd like. Hit connect. You hear it talk for a second, and just hit start travel.
Simrate 2. Simrate 4.
And what it will do is, as it gets, I think, within 5 or 8 miles or so of any waypoint, it slows the sim rate back down, allows the aircraft to make any course corrections it needs to, and then speeds back up. And it's a really handy tool, and if you want it to stop doing that, you just simply hit stop travel and disconnect, and you have full control over it again. But it beats trying to use the in-game interface to speed up the time. And I use that to get through the boring parts of the flight. All right, so again, we're at our cruise altitude. I'll come back to you guys when we start getting closer to our descent. Alright guys, so we basically reached our top of descent, and how I know that is you guys can see this little tail right here. This indicates our top of descent. Now, this is something that I will be adding to the guide later. It's not in the guide right now because I don't always see it, and I don't know if I'm just missing it or if I'm like losing my mind or something, right? But I don't recall seeing it often. So I'm sort of waiting, and I don't know if it's a new development. But you guys saw at the beginning of the video I just updated the A320 mod. But this tail indicates it's time to descend. So I didn't notice it until too late, unfortunately. I had already stepped away from the office, and at the time I came back in, I saw it on the screen and went, oh crap. So this little line tail, as I said, indicates our top of descent. So now it's time to go ahead and start setting up. So what we're going to do here is, and actually, you know what, I'm going to leave that paused for a minute so I can show you guys a few things. We're going to bring up the guide here. And what we're looking for is our touchdown zone altitude that we see right here. And you can see this breaks down the approach plate. This is the approach plate for the ILS 25 left. Okay, and our touchdown altitude is 104 feet. So we're basically going to take our altimeter, our altitude target, and set it all the way down to the bottom. Okay, we're going to go all the way down to basically to 2,000 feet really is our target, but I'm going to set it down to the bottom for now. But then later on we'll bring it back up, and I'll have to explain why later. Okay. But you can see here's the CVU transition that we talked about earlier, which will bring us onto the approach. Okay, here we can see at crane we want to be at 10,000 feet. Okay, and then it gives you a breakdown of where you should be in your target, I should say, altitude based on the approach. Now this is really important to follow, and you guys are going to see more why later, especially as we're dealing with things like the simulator not necessarily being optimized. We have issues with the autopilots. We all know that. I myself, as much as a few others, have had issues where the aircraft suddenly stops descending for no apparent reason. These are things that we're going to have to battle as we move on. So you can look at it as a frustration point, or we can look at it as, you know, just another challenging aspect of flying the aircraft, you know, and that's sort of where my mindset has gone until things clean up. Is, all right, well, you know, it gives us something to do. It gives us a way to control the aircraft. All right, you know, something that, think of it as a failure, if you will, right? You know, a system failure that we have to adjust to. So let's go ahead and get in the simulator. I'm going to unpause it here. Let's go to our FCP. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to start kicking this guy all the way down. Now it should take about 10 miles before it starts descending. And the reason why it's supposed to slow down before it actually commits to the descent. Alright, so what we're going to do here though is instead, and actually let's watch it and see if it does it. Let me speed that time up again.
Simrate 2. Simrate 4. Simrate 2.
Alright, so it took about 5 miles or so, give or take, until it started descending. Oh, let me stop that speed. Alright, but now it's going to start its descent. We can see we're in descent mode, and now it's important to remember, if we hit up, the manage mode with the little orange dot, that's if our arrow is pointed up. Let me get it back there. There it is. You can see the arrow on the altitude knob pointing up. That means manage mode, and that's going to get us into this descent mode. If we push down, it's going to put us into open descent. Now, I'm going to leave it in the manage descent, but I'm going to explain the difference between the two. In open descent, the aircraft is going to pitch down at whatever angle is necessary to maintain our current rate of speed, versus following the vertical profile for the descent that's in descent mode. So when you just see DES, the aircraft is using its descent profile. When you see open descent, it's using its airspeed, okay, whatever pitch angle it needs to maintain the desired airspeed. Now, this is critical because in open descent, you're going to want to pay attention to what your altitude is and adjust your speed based on what your altitude is and how quickly you want to descend. Now, you can see we're descending here at about 2,700 feet per minute. The other thing to look at in the guide here, real quick, is the calculating the descent here. Now, this is a very rough idea. Oops, didn't mean to hit that. Sorry, guys. And you can see what you want to do. The formula is your current altitude to your target altitude. So in our case is 100 feet. Basically, we're going all the way down. Okay. So what we're doing is, and actually I think what I did here in this guide is I'm going to crane. So we're going from our current altitude to 10,000 feet. That's how I'm calculating this. Okay. So we take our current altitude, subtract 10,000 feet. That gives us 24,000 feet. Then we take that number, so 24,000 times 3 gives us to 66,000, and you divide it by 1,000 feet and go to 66 nautical miles plus 10 nautical miles because remember I told you it's supposed to take about 10 nautical miles for the aircraft to slow down and then begin the descent. Now, this number here, I actually should have increased it to like 2,400 or whatever our descent rate is, because you want this number to be whatever your descent rate is in feet per minute. So if you're descending at 1,500 feet per minute, you would set this to 1,500, etc. Okay? So anyway, that's in the guide. Again, that's a very rough estimate, but it also breaks down how to look for your top of descent on your flight plan according to SimBrief. Again, that's a little different than what the aircraft showed us today. The aircraft actually had us descending just before we reached Hollywood. Okay, this waypoint right here. All right. So anyway, but again, it's much more clear in the guide than probably what I've explained it here. I hope I didn't just confuse the living crap out of everybody. But you guys have this information in there as well. Okay. All right, and you can see here that even though we've set 100 feet as our target altitude, again, there's that magenta flight level 130 indicating that we are restricted to 13,000 feet, and that's right here at Sivu. Okay, we cannot descend below 13,000 until we continue on down the flight plan. All right, so from here, it'll be, we reach 18,000 feet. We're going to set our altimeter back. Now, let me see if we got something else here. We do enter destination data. This is also in the dock. What we need to do here is we're going to come down, and what it's referring to is we need to go to our performance page. We need to page over until we see approach. And sorry, we want next phase. There we go. There's our approach phase. And so now we need to populate the information for KLAX. Now, the first thing we're going to want is our MDA, or our minimum altitudes. Okay, minimums. So we're going to come back up to that approach plate. Is this the one I wanted? This might not be the one I wanted. Oh yeah, there we go. And we're going to be looking at 304 feet for our minimums. Actually, sorry, that's wrong. 540 feet for the MDA. You have the decision height. Sorry, that's decision height, as you can see here. And then here we have our minimums. Now, you can enter one or the other. It doesn't allow you to enter both. So the decision height is the altitude at which, if you cannot see the runway, you would call it a missed approach and follow the instructions that are up here. Okay. And then the minimums is, you know, our minimum altitude. Again, I believe it's the same behavior, but we're going by a different number here. So the minimums there, I already forgot what it was, even though we're just looking at it, 540 feet. So we're going to type 540 and drop that in there. Okay, now we're also going to go ahead and clear that, and we need to get the rest of our information. Now there's a couple of different ways that we can do this, but I'm just going to grab the MEDAR information. So we're just going to do KLAX MEDAR. Now, I'm not using the information that's actually in the guide right now because we have live weather turned on, so it's obviously going to be different. But there is an example of this in the guide and where I'm getting all this information from, but I'll show you. So we're going to move this off to the side. So first we want our altimeter. That's going to be pressure altimeter, so 3006. So we're going to go 0.06, throw it up there. And while we're here, we can also put it into our, oh, I hate it when it does this. There we go. Let's set it here, 3006, there we go. And then we'll, once we drop below our altitude, we'll set it in the altimeter. Temperature, so let's go back to our browser. Temperature, 13.9, so we can call this 14 degrees. Winds, let's grab those. Calm, so when it says winds calm, we'll just type 0/0. 0/0. Okay. Just looking at something real quick up here. Nope, okay, that's all it says. Alright, and then that's it for the MEDAR page. Now, transition altitude again, US, always 18,000 feet, which we're approaching. So grab that guy and click it on. Now, that's all we need for that page. And you can see our approach speed is going to be 132 knots. We're landing configuration 3 with full flaps. Okay, so now let's come up top. We're past through 18,000 feet, so now we need to set our altimeter. So we're going to come down, give it a pull, or sorry, push. 3003, we're going to change that to 3006, and now we have our altimeter set up. Okay, you can see we're approaching Sivu here. Okay, we're about 12 miles out. We're descending a little slow, so this is another perfect example of things that I watch for with this, because that's not fast enough. And you can also see here at Neil, we need to be under 270 knots, which it looks like we did match. So what I'm going to do now, oh, let's see, never mind, it's extending. All right, so after we pass Neil, it's diving down. All right, so we'll go ahead and just let it do its thing now. And you can see this tail here is indicating when we're supposed to reach the target altitude. So based on this, we should hit 13,000 feet within about the next 4 miles, but I think that's a little optimistic, but we'll see here in a second. Well, maybe not. It's dropped pretty quick. And this is a critical stage. This is where you really want to be watching, because if you need to take over or force the aircraft to descend faster, don't hesitate. Just do it. It's easier to level out the aircraft if you're descending too fast than it is to try to dive the aircraft down because you missed your target. Stay ahead of it. By all means, stay ahead of it. And it looks like we're going to hit our altitude. Things are actually going really well here. This was actually one of the major problems for me in getting this guide out and why it took so long. Everything was going great up until this point. The descents were just killing me. Every time I did it was one bug after another. So it's just been a battle. Looks like we're going to hit it. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to want to be looking at here while we're on the approach, come back down to our MCDU, is click on your RadNav page and verify that your ILS frequency is correct. And again, going back to our approach plate, we can see the ILS frequency for 25 left right here. Okay, 109.9, and then we also have it right up here as well. Okay, and then we also have the final approach course as well if we need it. Okay, let's go back to the flight plan. And the other thing about the performance page is you can see that we can activate the approach phase automatically or force it by clicking this twice. So you click it once to click it, select it again to confirm it. However, when you reach the decel point on the flight plan, it will automatically activate the approach phase. Alright, so let's see how we're looking here. So we have passed through 13,000 feet as targeted, so that's good. Now we're going for 10,000. It looks like VNAV has had an update by flybywire or somebody, because it's doing better today than I've seen this do in a while. I'm really happy with the performance so far. Let's see, we're still a ways to go. If we go to our progress page, let's see if that's been updated. It doesn't look like it. I was hoping it would tell us, well, let's see, it's Econ Cruise. Can I page over? No, not yet. So hopefully when this gets updated, the progress page will actually tell us how many miles we have left to go. So I'm just sort of hoping for that. Oh, well, it actually looks like we might have it right here. Distance 43 miles, it looks like. Oh, yeah, there we go. So 42. All right, cool. All right, so 42 miles. We're at 10,000 feet. Looking good. Getting ready to turn on to our final approach. Again, blinking due to an altitude restriction, so you can see altitude constraint here. Now we are at 10,000 feet, so let's bring them lights back up. For landing, we're going to use taxi on the nose wheel light. Set our landing lights up, and runway turn off lights if required. Everything else stays good. We can go ahead and chime the cabin, let them know, hey, getting ready. Now, between 25 and 30 miles or so is the target. However, what I like to do is once I turn on to the final heading, as we're doing here, I activate the LS button here. What the LS button does is, it's not necessarily a mode as much as it is an acquisition. It's going to start trying to acquire the ILS frequency, or the localizer. And we'll see it populate once it's acquired it. Once it's acquired that, we can turn on the localizer, which will center us on the runway heading. Descent is still looking good. We're looking for 9,000 feet here. Well, actually, it has slowed down a bit. So this is going to be another one of those times. Just sort of watching it for a second. We'll see what it does. 600 feet per minute ain't going to get us where we need to be. And the approach phase has been activated, it looks like, already. Yep. So we're at the decel, we're past the decel. Let's move that flight plan up. Yeah, she's not descending fast enough for me. So what I'm going to do is click this down into an open descent. Okay, and then I'm going to try to forcibly get her to descend faster. So I gave it a down click after I set my target. I'm just going to monitor it. Sometimes it'll listen to me and then go back up. Alright, the ILS frequency has been acquired, so we can see here, this is the localizer for the lateral navigation. So what we can do is click this loc button, and you can see the green lock comes up. It means it's acquired it and locked it. And now it's going to sort of steer us back and forth for a bit until it actually locks onto the localizer. I've seen it do some weird behavior before. Now it's coming back to the left to line us back up. Not sure what the big right turn there was all about. This does mean left of aircraft. This is right of aircraft, so it's a little odd when it does that, but it is what it is. Now we're below 10,000 feet and we're fast, so I'm actually going to try to force the speed here. So I'm going to actually slow us down to, I'm going to set the target at the moment for 200 knots. And actually disregard that. I think what I'll do is something a little different here. I think what we'll do is just activate the approach mode. The localizer's been locked. Now it's going to look for the glide slope. It should start descending and slowing the aircraft down, but I think what we're going to do is pull the speed brakes out because we need to be under 250 knots. And the reason why we're not is because of the descent rate. Okay, we're descending very quickly. But again, don't be afraid to override the aircraft. If you're not descending fast enough, get the nose down. You need to be on target, you know, especially when we're getting in close like this. Like we are now inside 20 miles. Alright, so now we'll let her go back into managed mode. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to set our missed approach altitude for 2,000 feet. We're under altitude constraint at 3,600, so I'm not worried about the speed just yet, because as the aircraft starts to level out, we're going to start to slow down very quickly. Now this is indicating that we're actually below the glide slope at this point. So we're now within 15 miles. What we're going to be looking for is 10 miles. We're going to be looking at about 200 knots. Flaps 1, 8 miles. Flaps 2, 5 to 6 miles. Flaps 3, gear down. Locked on the glide slope and localizer. And then between 3 and 5 miles, full flaps, stabilized, ready for landing. Okay, and you can see now the glide slope's starting to come down. Speed coming down. Now we can do a couple different things here at this point. Let's go ahead and do flaps 1 a little early. Help slow us down a little sooner. If need be, you can drop the gear. The gear is a great way to induce drag on the aircraft. And you can see the GS there. That means the glide slope is now locked in. So now we're going to follow our 3-degree approach. So we're right where we need to be now. We're looking good. Now it's showing us 12 miles. The distance isn't quite right. So we're going to go ahead and go flaps 2 now. We're going to set our auto brake for low. You can either use no auto brake or low auto brake. We have plenty of runway and we're a very light aircraft. Let's go ahead and bring that gear down. You can see how much it really does pull on that. Flaps 3, 185 knots is the requirement here, so we can go ahead and drop flaps 3. See it right here. 185 knots. Below 177, we actually can go full configuration, so let's go flaps 4. You can see your flaps indicator here. Flaps and slats. And at this point, we're just riding it in. Let's go ahead and bring the speed brakes back up and arm them. Got down to where we needed to be. Make sure they're armed. We'll need them for the landing. Make sure you have your reverse thrust mapped. For me, it's a toggle. Just switches back and forth. So I push the button, engages reverse thrust. I push my throttle forward. It actually pushes it backwards to engage the reverse thrust. Toggle it again. Pull my throttles back to idle. I like to do between about 500 and 200 feet is I'll disengage the autopilot and the auto throttle and take full control of the aircraft. And then I'll fly our flight path indicator as close to the flight directors as I can. Alright, so we're on our approach speed. Cabin, when this comes up to check, we're just going to go ahead and give them a ring. And no blue means we're good to go. We'll go ahead and throw 251 up in here. Actually, no, I won't worry about it. We would set that for our missed approach if needed, but that's only if we fly the missed approach. That'll be a different video. I don't want to confuse anybody, and that's not in the guide yet, so I'm just going to wait right 1,000 feet. Again, all of this is in the guide, everything that I've discussed so far. $700 feet. According to this, we're actually a little low, according to the PAPI lights. Alright, so at this point I'm disengaging the autopilot, taking control of the aircraft, getting that nose up a bit. A little high.
50, 40,
30 feet. We'll start our flare.
20, 10,
Let her settle in.
5,
Try to maintain that center line. Reverse thrust. Reverse thrust through about 80 knots. There we go. Disengaging reverse thrust. Pulling the throttles back. That's because they were full forward. That's why I got the caution. Again, because of the way that I use the auto brake or the auto reverse thrust. Slowly applying the wheel brakes. And the alert was that flaps weren't in takeoff position, so that's okay. Alright, and we are down. Next steps here, we're going to stop at the hold short line before we actually cross the runway or join the taxiway. So we're just going to hold here for a minute unless instructed otherwise, but remember you're a single pilot here. We don't have a great co-pilot. So what I'm going to do for a moment is just hit the parking brake. Now we'll clean up the aircraft. So we're going to go flaps up. Spoilers disarmed. Predictive wind shear off. Weather radar off if you have it. TCAS to standby. Okay, let's go up top for a second. We are going to turn off the landing lights. Turn off the runway turn-off lights. Leave the taxi light on. Turn off the strobe light. Start the APU. We're going to need it when we get to the gate if there's no external power available to us. And I think we are good to go. We can turn off our flight direct or the LS mode. Turn off the flight directors, the altitude constraints. Set FCP down to 0. All right, and we're ready to taxi out. And to clear that warning, you can just hit clear if you did the same thing I did. All right, and now we'll taxi to our gate. Again, simulating that we got authorization to do so after I disengage the parking brake. There we go. Alright, so as I said, I'm just taxiing to the gate at this point, so I'll see you guys when we get close. Alright, so we're going to park here at 49er Alpha. Now, if you have ATC, they would normally give you a gate assignment. And you should have a little dude parking you, giving you the marshalling instructions. Since we don't, we're just going to come out here for a second. Need to adjust the sensitivity on my toe brakes. They're really sensitive. There we go, close enough. Alright, back inside the seat here. First thing is obviously set the parking brake. Then we're going to come up top for a minute. Turn that nose wheel light off. Get it out of people's faces here. The APU is now available. We're going to set the APU bleed. Now, obviously we have external power, but normally you'd have to request it. So since we have external power, we'll activate external power. At the point you activate external power, APU bleed can come off, master switch can come off, and let's go ahead and shut the engines down. Next step here is engine 1 off, engine 2 off, or vice versa, I guess. And transponder to standby or off. Cabin door can be unlocked. Top again, seatbelt signs can come off, smoking signs are off. Fuel pumps off. Oh, I never closed that. I thought that closed, my bad. There we go. Now, if you were in a turnaround state, and we also want the beacon light turned off. If you're in a turnaround state, so you're just leaving the aircraft in a position for the next crew to come on board, or maybe you're getting ready to, reprogram the MCDU and get back out there, then you're in a turnaround state. The aircraft can be left as is. If you want to go full cold and dark, then we would just go back upstairs and shut the rest of it off. So we would do external power, nav switches off, and batteries 1 and 2 off. I'm not sure why that's... There it goes. That was weird. All right. And we now have a dark aircraft. So you guys, as always, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial series. This will probably be the last one I do for the A320 for a while. It's for a full flight, but it matches the guide. Next things that's going to be coming to the guide, as I said, we're going to be talking about RNAV approaches, missed approaches, editing waypoints and clearing discontinuities and things like that in the MCDU. As more features become available in the MCDU, we're obviously going to be going over those. There are a few advanced features in the MCDU menu that will be also adding to the guide that Fly-by-Wire has put into it, as far as where to get your ADIS information, weather information, etc. There's some third-party features they put into the aircraft to make our lives a little bit easier as simmers. And I'll be adding those to the guide as well. So the guide is going to be in constant development. Again, I appreciate everybody's patience and everybody's support in the last couple of days. I mean, the number of people who have found value in this and are purchasing it is just feeling it. It's really heartwarming, and it makes the hard work feel like it was worth it. So I can't tell you guys what that means to me. I'm not someone who takes that kind of thing lightly. It really is. It's a really good feeling. However, the other thing I want to talk to everyone about is please make sure that if you're subscribing to the channel via the Patreon site, anyone who subscribes should get a link to my Discord. If you're not, please let me know. Send me a message via Patreon or put it in the link description or in the link down below. I don't care. The description down below. You guys know what I mean. Comment fields. Gosh. But let me know if you're not getting the Discord link, because I want you guys to join the Discord. I want to know your feedback on this document. If there are parts that are too confusing, if there are things I need to reword, if there are things I'm wrong about, absolutely, definitely want to know. And then the next guide that I'm thinking about doing is the TBM 930. I really like it. It's a turboprop aircraft. It steps away from the airliner while having a bunch of the same functionality and some of the same abilities that it has, but it just sort of changes the game up. However, I'd like to hear what you guys' opinion on what guide would you guys like to see. Like I said, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be or post it on the Patreon site if you're a Patreon subscriber, or join my Discord and you guys will see it. You can post it there. But anyway, I hope you guys are all doing very well and staying healthy. You all mean very much to me, especially in this time of everything that's going on around us. Bless you all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.